welcome back. Thank you so much for watching Sunday Brunch. I'm Houston, and of course, your guest है उनसे तो मिलाया आपको. We just spoke to the guest, and now obviously there's going to be a topic. And over the last several years, America has gone through recession. People are still recovering from it. A lot of people lost jobs. They don't get as paid as they used to, and they're unable to afford the high cost insurance. And so the topic today would be, since we have the experts, is what are some ways a person can keep his or her family healthy, and at the same time, what would you do if your family requires medical care? So we'll start off with you. And it's funny I'm asking you this, that you know the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
Sure.
You don't like the saying, I bet, right?
No, I think that's great. I eat apples all the time.
Okay,
No big deal.
good. Now tell us, what can people do to stay healthy? That would be your question.
Well, I think, it's a very good question. And part of staying healthy is really being proactive in your own life. I mean, if you think about the obesity rates that have gone up in the United States or even just worldwide, over the last several years, I mean, that is really the problem that people are having and why they're developing so many diseases even at young age.
Right.
You see a lot of younger people today with hypertension or high blood pressure. You see a lot of younger people with diabetes,
Right.
high cholesterol, etc. It's actually the same, similar to, there's a lot more younger people that need reading glasses nowadays because we're always on our phones or computers or laptops or whatever else, and so our eyes are getting worse, right?
Right.
So part of it is, how do you become more proactive in your own health? You don't really have to have a big fancy gym membership or a personal trainer or anything like that to do that. Really, it just requires you to be a little more proactive and make better choices. So, something simple people can do is taking a walk. Once a day for 30 to 40 minutes.
Right.
Something that brings your heart rate up. You could do it as a family. Or something as simple as just trying to modify some of the things in your diet. So rather than eating, fast food or oily food all the time, or, try to modify that somehow to switch in 1 or 2 meals
Right.
to eat something healthy.
Of course.
I mean, every time one of my patients, for example, that has a heart attack, the first question is always, well, what do I need to do about my diet?
Right.
And I always say, well, look at me. Does it look like I diet very well? And I don't diet very well. But
Right.
I say, if you go on an extreme and decide to say, I'm only going to eat salad, fruits, vegetables, and nothing else that I really enjoy,
Right.
then
Right.
you're probably going to hate your diet really quick, and you're going to go back to worse eating habits than you did
Because of
before
that.
because of that. But if you try to do everything in moderation, so
Right.
if
Moderation
you
is
enjoy
the
a
key.
cheeseburger, it's okay to have a cheeseburger. It's not the end of the world. But if you're eating cheeseburgers every day, that's probably a problem. If
Right,
you're eating
of
pizza every day, that's probably a problem.
Right.
So,
Let's stop talking about food now, because
Okay.
now I'm getting hungry watching about food. But I think it's important. I
Right.
think having that moderation, and I think obesity. And again, something sadly in our culture I'm seeing a lot is like kids, they're just obese now.
Right.
Where you're like, can this child eat all this food or not? And they're feeding it, feeding the child. Okay. Well, the next thing I wanted to ask you that, what about prevention? Do you talk to your patients when they come to your pharmacy?
Absolutely. I mean, we try to help them out by, number one, taking out some of the stress in their lives by not running around all over town
Right.
to take care of the stuff.
Right.
We help them by having the delivered pharmacy service
Right.
that we do it to their home at no charge. We do also blood pressure screening. Most places you go there's a machine
Right,
in
and
the
you
big
put your
chain.
arm.
You put it on, you check it, and you're done. But what we do at delivered pharmacy, we have a one-on-one, face-to-face. You sit down, one pharmacist goes down and takes your blood pressure, talks to you about some of the things that you're
Right.
doing, learns more about you, some of your habits,
Right.
to help you more and more understand
about
about your blood pressure. We also do periodically sugar testing, cholesterol testing,
Okay.
and some of it's free, and some of it happens on a quarterly basis.
Right.
The bottom line, the doctor, what he said is a good thing. Moderation is an important thing.
It's a key thing.
At the same time, take the stress out of your life and just try to.
We could do a whole topic about stress, how
yeah,
to take stress
absolutely.
out of your life, definitely. And when it comes to heart disease, now how do you screen patients for heart disease when they come to you?
So there are several things you can use. There are very simple tools you can use to screen, and there are obviously very complicated tools.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people think that the only way to figure out if you have heart disease is should you get a stress test or not, right? And that's one way to do it. That's not unreasonable. There's another thing called, for example, what I usually use is somebody who comes to say to me, I want to just know what my risk is of having heart disease.
Right.
Well, there's this thing called the Framingham Risk Score, which is a really simple tool, and it takes in people's age, whether they're on treatment for high blood pressure, diabetes, whether they've had known heart disease,
Right.
whether they're smokers, and what their total and cholesterol and what their good cholesterol is. And based on that, it gives you a risk estimate. And if your risk is less than 10%, then you're at very low risk for having heart disease.
Right.
If you're between 10 and 20, then you're medium risk. And then if you're greater than 20%, you're at high risk.
Oh, wow.
And so, when you fall into a certain category, if you're at low risk, then really no testing I'm going to do is going to do anything for you.
Right, of course.
You just probably need to modify whatever risk factors you have. So if you have high blood pressure, make sure you take your medicines.
Right.
If you smoke, you probably want to quit smoking.
What about family history?
And family history is also very important because you cannot control your DNA. As much as we like to say
We
that
have those with
diabetes and smoking and cholesterol is the main culprit, part of it is genetic. And we don't know what part exactly it plays into it, but definitely part of heart disease is genetic, and that's the part you can't control.
Right.
So if you have a family history of heart disease or multiple family members that have had heart disease, there are several things you can do. Stress testing may be an option.
Right.
There's a thing called a coronary calcium score, which people can get, or that really kind of gives you a number. Again, it's a screening tool to say, okay, if you fall into a low or medium or high risk for having heart disease. And so those are very simple tests, very easy things to do. Whether you have risk factors yourself, whether you have a family history, but really prevention comes in your own health care, meaning you need to make sure that you modify your risk factors, and that's really where the key is. A stent is never a treatment. It's not a cure, sorry. It is part of the treatment, which is supplemented with medical therapy or lifestyle modification. I'm sorry, medical therapy and lifestyle modification.
Right.
So if you only just get an intervention without the other stuff involved,
It won't work.
you're definitely not going to have any prevention of heart
Right,
disease. You're actually going to have it again.
Of course.
And so that's kind of how I, screen people for heart disease.
And the next thing is another thing when people do get treatment, and I know at the pharmacy, for example, they come and they need medicines. Now, when they are trying to get their long-term treatment, now how can they or how should they make sure they take their medicines? Because another thing, which is kind of not really the topic, but I've heard where people are like, oh, that's my husband's medicine, let me just take it. That's my dad's medicines, let me take it. Now, what could be the detrimental effects by doing that, by taking someone else's medicine that wasn't prescribed to you? And as a pharmacist, what would you like to say?
I mean, it's very dangerous. I mean, each patient, it's an individual case, has its own things that they have to take.
Right.
If they start mixing dad's and mom and grandma's prescription, they may end up in the hospital because some prescriptions have multiple different milligrams, multiple different strength, and you cannot just go by first name only.
Right.
There's a lot of things that can differentiate between medication.
Of course.
My advice is to sit down with your pharmacist once you get your prescription, ask questions, why, how, and what, to understand why you're taking this, how you should be taking it, and why I'm taking this, so that you understand and be, what the doctor said is be proactive in your therapy and your treatment.
Of course.
And never just take something on your own. Ask a pharmacist or a doctor to be on the safe side.
Okay, well, we'll talk more. I have to take a break. Before we go on break, I know we were talking about foods. Dr. Sambal was talking about all the different foods. I did want to tell you about Chennai Restaurant. It is a restaurant on Hillcroft, and they have lots of different foods, which I'm not going to start mentioning right now because I need to finish my show. And you can definitely call them, get catering done for a party. They have very nice banquet halls too. So do call the number that you see on the screen for Chennai Restaurant and try out their delicious foods. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. You are watching Sunday Brunch from Houston.